Min stood before the council chamber's great window and watched his world die. Below him, the crystal spires of the capital city gleamed in the double sunset, beautiful and peaceful as they had been for 10,000 years. But that peace was a lie now. In every hospital, in every home, Valian children lay dying from something no one could stop. He turned back to face the council members. 12 faces looked at him with the same exhausted desperation he felt in his bones. They had tried everything. Every medicine, every treatment, every desperate theory their best minds could create. Nothing worked. The plague that killed their young had no cure, no weakness, no mercy. "We must send the signal," Min said quietly. His voice barely echoed in the vast chamber. "We have no choice left." Council member Hana stood up slowly. Her silver robe seemed too heavy on her thin frame. She had not slept properly in weeks. None of them had. "You know what that means," she said. "Once we broadcast across the known galaxy that we are weak, that we are dying, we invite danger. There are species out there that would see this as opportunity, not tragedy." Min nodded. He knew. Every child learned the stories of species that had begged for help and found only exploitation. The galaxy was not cruel, but it was practical. Resources were limited. Distance was vast. And helping a dying species often meant wasting precious supplies on a lost cause. "What choice do we have?" another council member asked. His name was Diho, and his own daughter had died just 3 days ago. His eyes were hollow. "We watch our children die in silence. We pretend we have dignity while our species ends." The chamber fell quiet. Outside, the suns continued their slow descent. Somewhere in the city, another child took their last breath, and then another, and another. "Send the signal," Hana finally said. Her voice cracked. "Send it to everyone. Maybe someone will care enough to try." Min walked to the communication console himself. He did not trust this task to anyone else. His fingers moved across the controls, setting the message to broadcast on every frequency, in every common language, to every corner of known space. He thought carefully about the words. They had to be honest, desperate. They had to make someone, anyone, feel something. He began to record. "This is Council Leader Min of Valia. We are dying. A plague has come to our world that kills only our children. We have tried everything we know. We have failed. Our young ones are dying every day and we cannot stop it. We do not have much time. Please, if anyone can help us, we are begging you. Our children are dying. We have tried everything. Please help." His voice broke on the last word. He did not try to hide it. Let the galaxy hear his pain. Maybe it would matter, maybe it would not. He sent the message. For 2 days, nothing happened. The message traveled through space at the speed of light, reaching further and further into the darkness. On Valia, more children died. The hospitals overflowed. Parents held their young ones and whispered goodbye. Then the responses began. The first came from the Tholian Assembly, a species known for their advanced medicine. Their message was polite and sympathetic. They could not help. The distance was too great and they had their own concerns. They wished Valia well. The second came from the Moravian Collective. They had heard of the plague and were very sorry. However, they could not risk sending their own people into a potential contamination zone. They hoped Valia would understand. The third, fourth, and fifth messages all said similar things. "Sorry, too far, too dangerous, too expensive, good luck." Hana watched the responses come in with growing despair. "They do not care," she said to Min. "We are alone." "Keep watching," Min said, though his own hope was fading. Someone might. The console beeped. A new message was arriving. Hana pulled up the data, her breath caught. The message was short, only 2 sentences, but those 2 sentences changed everything. "Received, we're coming, hold on." The origin tag said the message came from a ship called Resilience. The species identifier made Hana's blood run cold. "Human from the planet Earth, a classified death world." "No," Hana whispered. She pulled up every file the Valian database had on humans. There was not much. Humans were new to the galactic community, only making contact 30 years ago, but the rumors about them were everywhere. They came from a world that tried to kill them constantly. Predators, diseases, weather, even the plants on their world were dangerous. Humans had evolved to survive in hell. "What are they?" Diho asked, looking at the anatomical scans Hana pulled up. The creatures looked almost Valian, but stronger, denser, built for violence. "Deathworlders," Hana said, "from Earth. Their world has gravity 40% stronger than ours. Their air has poison gas in it that they breathe like we breathe nitrogen. They evolved from hunters, apex predators." "And they are coming here?" another council member asked nervously. T-Min was looking at something else, the trajectory data. His eyes went wide. "They are burning fuel," he said quietly. "Look at their speed. They are traveling faster than any species should. They are using emergency acceleration." "What does that mean?" Hana asked. "It means they are risking their ship to get here quickly," T-Min said. He felt something strange in his chest, something he had not felt in weeks. "They are hurting themselves to reach us faster." The console beeped again. Another human message. This one had more information. A ship manifest, medical supplies, personnel, all volunteers, estimated arrival time. 3 days. The Moravian Collective had said the journey from their space to Valia would take 2 weeks minimum. The Tholians had said 3 weeks. The humans were saying 3 days from a starting position even further away. "This is impossible," Hana said. "They will damage their ship. They could die traveling at those speeds." "They know that," T-Min said softly, "and they are coming anyway." He sent a response. "Thank you, please be safe. We will prepare for your arrival." The human response came back in minutes, just one word. "Hurry." T-Min realized the word was not directed at Valia. It was directed at themselves. The humans were telling their own ship to hurry, to go faster, to risk more. For strangers they had never met, for children they had never seen. "What have we done?" Hana whispered, staring at the trajectory data showing the human ship screaming through space at dangerous speeds. "We sent an SOS to Deathworlders," Diho said quietly, "and they answered." Outside the window, another Valian sun set. In the hospitals, more children struggled to breathe. But for the first time in weeks, T-Min felt something other than despair. He felt afraid. But he also felt hope. 3 days. They just had to hold on for 3 days. Then they would meet the humans. Then they would see what Deathworlders really were, whether the stories were true, whether beings from a world of endless violence could possibly understand mercy. T-Min returned to the console and sent new orders across the planet. Prepare the landing facilities. Clear the largest hospital. Make room for the humans and whatever they brought with them. Make room for the Deathworlders who were burning across space to save them. And pray they had not made a terrible mistake. The human ship arrived early. Not 3 days as promised, but 2.5. T-Min received the notification in the middle of the night and rushed to the landing facility with his heart pounding. Hana met him there, along with a dozen other officials and medical staff. They all stared at the sky and waited. When the ship descended, it did not glide smoothly like Valian vessels. It came down hard and fast, engines screaming, leaving a trail of heat shimmer in the air. The landing struts hit the platform with a heavy thud that made everyone flinch. Smoke rose from the engine ports. Warning lights blinked across the hull. "They damaged their ship," Hana said, reading the scanner data with growing alarm. "Multiple systems are overheated. They pushed it beyond safety limits." "For us," T-Min said quietly. The ship's door opened with a hiss of pressure equalizing. The air that came out was hotter than Valian standard, thick with strange smells. Then the humans emerged. T-Min had seen pictures. He had studied the anatomical data, but nothing prepared him for seeing them in person. They were shorter than Valians but much broader, denser, like they carried extra weight in every muscle. Their skin came in different shades of brown and tan. Their eyes were small and deep-set, designed for hunting, and they moved with a terrible efficiency that made something primal in T-Min's brain whisper warnings. But what shocked him most was how exhausted they looked. The first human down the ramp was a woman in a dark uniform with silver markings. Her black hair was pulled back tight. Her face showed lines of stress and sleeplessness. She walked directly to T-Min without hesitation. Council leader T-Min, her voice was rough, strained. She spoke perfect Valian, but the accent was sharp and strange. "I'm Captain Dongjun of the Resilience. Where are the sick children?" No greeting, no formal protocol, just straight to the point. "Captain, we have prepared facilities for your team to rest after your journey." "Where are the children?" Dongjun interrupted. Her eyes were intense, almost angry. "We didn't come here to rest. We came to stop them from dying. Where are they?" Hana stepped forward. "The main hospital is 3 kilometers from here, but surely your crew needs to recover from such a difficult journey. Your ship clearly." "My ship is fine," Dongjun said flatly. "My crew is fine. The children are not fine. Take us to them now." T-Min exchanged a glance with Hana. This was not how first contact was supposed to happen. There were supposed to be ceremonies, formal introductions, cultural exchanges. But the human captain was already turning back to her ship, shouting orders in her own language. More humans emerged, 40 of them in total, just as the manifest had said. They carried equipment cases that looked heavy, moving with quick purpose. One of them was a man in white medical clothing with red markings. He had kind eyes but the same terrible exhaustion written across his face. "I'm Dr. G1, he said to Hana, his voice gentler than the captain's but just as urgent. "We brought as much medical equipment as we could carry, and we brought something else, ourselves. Humans have strong immune systems, very strong. We survive diseases that would kill most species. We want to study this plague, understand it, fight it, but we need to see the patients first." "This way," T-Min said, making a decision. The humans had traveled 2.5 days at dangerous speeds. They had burned their ship's safety reserves. They had crossed space for strangers. The least he could do was take them where they wanted to go. The journey to the hospital was strange. The humans walked fast, faster than Valians normally moved, like they were always in a hurry. They asked constant questions. How long since the plague started? How many children affected? What were the symptoms? What treatments had been tried? Their voices overlapped, urgent and demanding. When they reached the hospital, Dr. G1 stopped at the entrance. Through the transparent walls, they could see the rows of beds. Small Valian children lay motionless, their blue skin pale and sickly. Medical monitors beeped softly. Parents sat beside beds, holding tiny hands, whispering goodbye. Dr. G1's face changed. Something passed through his eyes that T-Min could not identify. Pain, maybe, or fury. The doctor's hands clenched into fists at his sides. "How many?" he asked quietly. 230 in this facility, Hana answered. 18,000 across the planet. "How many have died?" Hana's voice dropped to a whisper. 3,000 so far. Dr. G1 closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, they were hard and determined. He turned to his team and started giving orders in quick, sharp sentences. The humans scattered immediately, moving into the hospital with their equipment. T-Min and Hana followed Dr. G1 to the isolation ward where the sickest children lay. A young human woman was already there, unpacking medical scanners. She had gentle features and quick hands. When she looked at the first child, a little girl struggling to breathe, her eyes filled with tears. "Mina, focus," Dr. G1 said, but his voice was soft. "I'm sorry," Mina whispered. She wiped her eyes and continued working, but T-Min saw her hands shaking. This shocked him more than anything else. The humans were crying. These creatures from a death world, these apex predators, these beings who had pushed their ship to the breaking point, were crying over Valian children they had never met. Why? The word escaped T-Min's mouth before he could stop it. Dr. G1 looked up from the scanner he was calibrating. Why what? Why are you here? Why do you care? We are strangers, our species barely know each other. Yet you damaged your ship, exhausted yourselves, crossed space. T-Min struggled to find words. Why? Dr. G1 stared at him like the question made no sense. Because you asked for help, he said simply. Because children are dying. What other reason would we need? He turned back to his work before T-Min could respond. Around them, humans moved through the hospital like a storm. They were loud where Valians were quiet. They were fast where Valians were careful. They touched the equipment with confident hands, made quick decisions, spoke in short, urgent bursts. One human, a young man named Hyan with tired eyes and quick fingers, was already disassembling a Valian medical scanner. Hana rushed over in alarm. What are you doing? That equipment is calibrated for Valian biology. It's too slow, Hyan said, not looking up from his work. Human medical equipment runs faster, harder. We need speed right now, not perfection. I'm modifying this to push more power through the sensors. You'll burn it out. Maybe, but we'll get results 3 times faster, worth the risk. Hyan's hands moved with incredible speed, rewiring circuits that had taken Valian engineers months to design. You can build new scanners later. Right now, we need data. Hana looked at T-Min helplessly. Everything was happening too fast. The humans were taking over the hospital without permission, changing everything, breaking protocols that had stood for centuries. But in the isolation ward, Dr. G1 was already scanning the sickest child with Hyan's modified equipment. Numbers flowed across the screen faster than Hana had ever seen. The doctor's eyes moved rapidly, absorbing information, making connections. There, he said suddenly, pointing at the screen. See that? The plague attacks the respiratory system first, but that's not the real danger. It's causing the immune system to attack itself. Autoimmune response. A Valian doctor approached nervously. We discovered that weeks ago, but we cannot stop it. Every immune suppressant we try either has no effect or makes the plague worse. Because you're trying to calm the immune system, Dr. G1 said, still staring at the data. You're trying to make peace with it. That's not how humans think. He looked up and his eyes were fierce. We come from a world that tried to kill us every single day. Predators, diseases, disasters. We didn't survive by making peace. We survived by fighting back harder than anything that attacked us. He turned to his team. We're going to treat this plague like an enemy, an invader. We're going to declare war on it. Captain Dongjun appeared in the doorway. She had not rested at all since arrival. Her uniform was wrinkled, her eyes bloodshot, but her voice was steady and strong. What do you need, Doctor? Time, G1 said, and access to everything. All your medical data, all your research, all your failed attempts. Humans are good at learning from failure. It's how we survived. Every mistake teaches us something. You'll have it, T-Min said immediately. Everything we have is yours. Dongjun nodded once. Then we get to work, teams of 6, rotating 8-hour shifts. No one works more than 16 hours without mandatory rest. Captain, with respect, 8 hours is too much rest, one of the human medical staff said. We could do 4-hour rotations. 16 hours maximum, Dongjun repeated firmly. I know you all want to work until you drop, but we're no good to these children dead. We rest enough to stay functional. Understood? The humans nodded reluctantly, but T-Min saw several of them exchange glances that said they would work longer if they could hide it from their captain. As the night wore on, T-Min watched the humans work. They moved through the hospital like a force of nature, loud, fast, relentless. They pushed the equipment harder than it was designed for. They pushed themselves harder than any being should. When they spoke to the Valian medical staff, they were demanding but not cruel. When they spoke to the sick children, their voices became soft and gentle. And they never stopped moving. At dawn, T-Min found Mina sitting on the floor in a hallway, her head in her hands. She was crying again, trying to hide it. He sat down beside her carefully. "You are exhausted, you should rest." "A child died an hour ago," Mina whispered. "We were too late, just too late. You have only been here one day. You cannot save everyone." Mina looked at him with red eyes. "Yes, we can," she said fiercely. "We have to. That's why we're here. That's why we came. We don't accept death. We don't accept loss. We fight it with everything we have." She stood up, wiped her eyes, and walked back into the ward. Back to work. Back to war against the thing killing Valian children. T-Min remained sitting on the floor, stunned. These were Deathworlders, creatures from a planet of violence and death, and they had come across space with tears in their eyes and fire in their hearts to wage war against suffering itself. What had Valia invited into their world? And why did it feel like hope? On the third day, Dr. G1 called an emergency meeting. His face was gray with exhaustion, but his eyes burned with the same intensity he had arrived with. T-Min, Hana, and the senior Valian medical staff gathered in the conference room. The humans looked worse than when they had arrived. Thinner, more tired, but somehow more determined. "We have a treatment plan," G1 said without preamble. He brought up images on the display that made every Valian in the room go still with shock. "We're going to fight the plague with modified Earth pathogens." The room erupted in protests. Hana stood up, her voice sharp with alarm. "You want to introduce more disease into dying children. That is madness." "It's war," G1 said calmly. "The plague is an invader. We're going to send in soldiers to fight it. We've modified 3 Earth bacteria strains that attack similar pathogens on our world. They're completely harmless to Valian biology, but they'll compete with the plague for resources in the body. They'll give the children's immune systems time to recover and fight back naturally." A Valian doctor named Quan shook his head firmly. "This is too dangerous. We cannot introduce foreign organisms into our children. The risk is too high." "The risk of doing nothing is death," Captain Dongjun said from where she stood by the door. She looked like she had not slept at all. "Dr. G1's approach has a 70% success rate in simulations. Your current approach has a 0% success rate in reality." "Simulations are not real children," Hana said desperately. "No," G1 agreed. "But real children are dying right now while we debate. I'm not asking permission to try this on every patient. I'm asking permission to try it on the ones who will die anyway. The children in critical condition who have hours, not days. Give me your dying cases. Let me try to save them." The room fell silent. T-Min looked at the data G1 was presenting. The human approach was aggressive, dangerous, based on principles that went against everything Valian medicine taught. Valian doctors healed gently, carefully, trying to restore balance without causing harm. But Valian medicine was failing. "If this works," T-Min said slowly, "how quickly can you produce enough of this treatment for all the sick children?" "We already have," a human engineer named Salmon said. She looked proud despite her exhaustion. "We've been preparing it for 2 days. We have enough for 5,000 doses. If it works, we can make more, much more." They had been preparing without permission, without approval. They had been so certain their method would work that they had already invested time and resources into it. Hana looked horrified. "What if you are wrong? What if you make them suffer more before they die?" Mina, the young human who cried too easily, spoke up quietly. "Then we suffer with them. That's part of it. That's part of caring. You risk being wrong. You risk making mistakes. But you try anyway because trying is better than watching them die." "I approve the treatment," T-Min said. Every Valian in the room turned to stare at him. "For the critical cases, as Dr. G1 suggested, we try it on those who have no other hope." You cannot decide this alone, Quan protested. The council must vote. The council put me in charge of this crisis, T-Min interrupted. And I am making a decision. These humans crossed space to help us. They damaged their ship. They are destroying themselves working day and night to save our children. The least we can do is trust them. Ji-won nodded once, sharp and grateful. We'll start immediately. The first treatments will be administered within the hour. The humans filed out quickly, moving with purpose. Hana caught T-Min's arm as he turned to follow. You are gambling with children's lives, she said. No, T-Min replied quietly. I am watching humans gamble with their own lives, their own reputations, their own souls to try to save ours. The least we can do is match their courage. In the isolation ward, the first treatment began. A small Valian boy named Jinwoo lay in the bed, his breathing shallow and weak. His parents stood nearby, holding each other. Dr. Ji-won prepared the injection himself, his hands completely steady despite his exhaustion. This might not work, he told the parents honestly, but I believe it will, and if it does not, I will take that failure with me for the rest of my life. Your child's name will be remembered. He administered the injection. Then the waiting began. Humans and Valians stood together in the ward watching monitors checking vital signs. The minutes stretched out like hours. Jinwoo's breathing remained shallow. His heart rate stayed weak. Nothing changed. Then slowly, his oxygen levels began to rise. Just a little, then a little more. His breathing deepened. Color started returning to his pale blue skin. The monitors began showing numbers that looked less like death and more like life. It's working, Mina whispered. Tears streamed down her face again. It's actually working. By the end of the day, all 15 critical patients who received the treatment showed improvement. Not recovery, not yet, but improvement. They were fighting back. Their bodies were learning to win. Word spread across the planet like fire. The humans had done something impossible. They had found a way to fight the plague. But the cost was becoming visible too. T-Min found Hyun, the engineer, collapsed in a hallway at midnight. He had worked for 36 hours straight, modifying equipment, building new medical devices, pushing himself far past safe limits. When they tried to wake him, he mumbled about needing to finish calibrations and tried to stand up. He fell immediately. His body simply stopped obeying him. They carried him to a bed. He was asleep before they laid him down. This is what they do, Captain Dongjun said tiredly when T-Min expressed concern. She was standing beside Hyun's bed, checking his vital signs herself. They are volunteers. Every human on this ship volunteered to come. They knew it would be hard. They came anyway. But they are hurting themselves, T-Min said. Some of your crew have lost dangerous amounts of weight. They are running on stimulants and stubbornness. This cannot continue. It will continue until the job is done, Dongjun said simply. That is what humans do. We see a problem and we throw ourselves at it until either the problem breaks or we do. Usually both. She walked away to check on another patient, leaving T-Min staring at the sleeping engineer. Hyun's hands were covered in small burns from working too fast with hot equipment. His face was pale from exhaustion, but even in sleep, he looked determined. Over the next week, the human method spread across the planet. The treatment worked. Not every time, but most of the time. Survival rates climbed from 0 to 60%, then 70, then 80. Children who would have died started sitting up in bed, asking for food, crying for their parents with strength in their voices. But Hana watched the humans with growing concern. They were falling apart. 3 had collapsed from exhaustion and had to be hospitalized themselves. Dr. Ji-won was one of them. He had worked 90 hours with only brief rest periods before his body simply shut down. When they tried to confine him to bed, he kept trying to get up to check on patients. Mina stayed by his bedside when she was not working. You have to rest, she told him firmly. You cannot save anyone if you die. There are still 3,000 sick children, G1 mumbled. He was delirious with exhaustion. 3,000, we have to help them all. We are, Mina said gently. The Valian doctors are using our methods now. They are learning. They can continue the work. But the other humans were not resting either. They pushed themselves relentlessly. Saman worked 20-hour days producing more of the treatment. A human named Bora stayed awake for 40 straight hours monitoring critical patients, sustained only by stimulants that made her hands shake and her heart race. When Captain Dongjun finally ordered her to sleep, Bora cried from frustration. There are children who still need help, she said through her tears. I can keep going, I can work more. You can barely stand, Dongjun said, but her voice was gentle. Rest is not weakness, it is strategy. We need you healthy. Hana pulled T-Min aside one evening. They stood in an empty hallway away from the constant activity of the hospital. I need to understand something, she said quietly. Why are they doing this? I have read every file we have on humans. They are not pack-bonding species like us. They do not have instincts to protect other species young, yet they are destroying themselves to save ours. Why? T-Min had been wondering the same thing. He had watched humans cry over Valian children. He had watched them push themselves until they collapsed. He had watched them celebrate every tiny victory like it was the most important thing in the universe. I think, he said slowly, that we misunderstood what a death world creates. We assumed it would make them cruel, hard, willing to let others die because death is normal to them. And, Hana prompted. And we were wrong. They come from a world of death, so they learn to fight death with everything they have. They evolved to care fiercely because caring kept their tribes alive. On Earth, if you abandoned your young, your family, your group, you all died. So they learned to never abandon anyone. He gestured toward the ward where Mina was checking on sleeping children, her movements gentle despite her exhaustion. They do not see Valian children. They see children, young ones who need protection. And their instinct, their Deathworld instinct, is to protect them at any cost. Even the cost of themselves, Hana whispered. Especially that cost, T-Min agreed. Because that is what Deathworld evolution teaches you, that some things are worth dying for. That night the last critical patient stabilized. A little girl named Yuri, who had been hours from death, opened her eyes and smiled at her parents. In the corner of the room, Mina burst into tears again. But this time they were tears of joy. The plague was retreating. The humans were winning their war. But victory had a price, and the humans were paying it in pieces of themselves they might never get back. T-Min watched Captain Dongjun lean against a wall, her eyes closed, her face showing every year of stress and exhaustion. She had not rested properly in 9 days. None of them had. Why? He asked her quietly, the same question he had asked Dr. G1. Why do you care so much? Dongjun opened her eyes. They were bloodshot and tired but still fierce. Because you asked, she said simply. Because someone sent a message into the dark saying they needed help. And we are humans. We answer. That is what we do. She pushed herself upright and walked back into the ward. Back to work. Back to the war against death that humans had been fighting since they first evolved on their brutal, beautiful planet. And T-Min realized that Valia had not invited monsters to their world. They had invited guardians, warriors who fought not for conquest but for compassion. Deathworlders who refused to let others die. 3 weeks after the humans arrived, Dr. G1 collapsed again. This time it was worse. He fell in the middle of the ward while checking on a patient, and he did not get back up. His heart was racing dangerously fast. His body temperature had dropped too low. He had pushed himself so far past human limits that his body was shutting down as a protection measure. They put him in intensive care, the same ward where Valian children had been dying just weeks before. Captain Dongjun stood over his bed with her fists clenched. Her face showed no emotion, but T-Min could see her jaw muscles working. She was furious, not at G1, at herself. I should have stopped him, she said quietly. I knew he was not resting enough. I knew he was taking stimulants to stay awake longer. I should have ordered him to bed days ago. He would not have listened, Mina said from the other side of the bed. She was holding G1's hand, monitoring his vital signs with her other hand. None of us would have. We came here to save children. That mission does not stop because we are tired. The mission stops if you are dead, Dongjun snapped. Then she closed her eyes and took a breath. I'm sorry, that was too harsh. No, Mina said softly. You are right, we have been reckless, all of us. It was not just G1. 2 other humans were hospitalized with exhaustion. Salmon had developed tremors in her hands from too many stimulants. Hyun was suffering from severe malnutrition because he kept forgetting to eat. Bora had started hallucinating from sleep deprivation before they forced her to rest. The human crew was falling apart. Captain Dongjun called a meeting. All the humans who could still walk gathered in the hospital conference room. They looked terrible, thin, exhausted. Some of them swayed where they stood, but their eyes were still fierce, still determined. New orders, Dongjun said firmly. Mandatory rest, 8 hours of sleep every night, mandatory meals, no stimulants without medical approval, no working more than 12 hours per day. Anyone who disobeys will be confined to quarters. Captain, there are still children who need, one of the crew started. The Valian doctors have learned our methods, Dongjun interrupted. They can continue the work. We have done what we came to do. We taught them how to fight. Now we need to recover before we become patients ourselves. But that is an order, Dongjun said, her voice hard as steel. I will not lose any of my crew to exhaustion, not when we have already won. The plague is retreating. The survival rate is 85%. We succeeded. Now we rest. The humans nodded reluctantly, but T-men saw the frustration on their faces. They did not want to stop. Even now, even falling apart, they wanted to keep working. Later that evening, Hana found Mina sitting alone in a quiet hallway. The young human was staring at her hands, which shook slightly from exhaustion and stimulant use. Her eyes were red from crying, as they so often were. Hana sat down beside her. They were quiet for a long moment. Why do you cry so much? Hana asked gently. I have observed you for 3 weeks. You cry when children die. You cry when children live. You cry from exhaustion and from joy. I do not understand. Mina smiled sadly. Humans are emotional. We feel things very strongly, too strongly sometimes. We cannot help it. But you came from a death world. I thought beings from violent places would be hard, emotionless. No, Mina said quietly. It is the opposite. We came from a world that tried to kill us constantly. If we had been emotionless, we would have let each other die. We would have abandoned the weak. We would have failed as a species. We survived because we cared about each other so much that we would die to protect each other. That caring, that emotion, that is what kept us alive. She wiped her eyes. I cry because I care, because seeing suffering hurts me, because saving a child makes me feel like maybe the universe is not completely cruel. I cannot stop these feelings. I do not want to stop them. They are what make me human. Hana was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked the question that had been growing in her mind for days. Why do you care about us? We are not human. Our children are not your children. We are aliens, strangers. Why do you hurt yourselves to save us? Mina looked at her with surprise. Because you asked, because you needed help. What other reason would we need? That is what Dr. Jiwon said, and Captain Dongjun, but I still do not understand. Mina thought carefully about her words. On Earth there is an old human saying, no man is an island. It means that no human exists alone, we are all connected. What hurts one human hurts all humans, and I think we have expanded that idea. We do not see humans and aliens, we see people who can suffer and people who can be saved. Your children were suffering, we had the knowledge to help. How could we not come? Even if it meant hurting yourselves, even if it meant possibly dying. Especially then, Mina said firmly. Because that is what makes life worth living. Knowing that you can make a difference, that you can take pain and turn it into healing, that you can look at suffering and say, not on my watch, she smiled sadly. Humans are not perfect. We are violent sometimes, cruel sometimes. We hurt each other and ourselves. But we are also capable of tremendous compassion. And I think that compassion, that fierce caring, is the best thing about us. Hana felt something shift in her chest, a realization that was almost painful. You have ruined us, she whispered. Mina blinked in surprise. What? You have ruined us, Hana repeated. Before you came, Valia was content. We lived peaceful lives. We solved problems with logic and patience. We accepted what we could not change, but you show us that nothing is acceptable, that suffering should not be tolerated, that we should fight with everything we have even if it costs us everything. You have ruined our peace. I'm sorry, Mina said, looking distressed. We did not mean to. No, Hana interrupted. Do not apologize. I am not saying this with anger. I am saying it with gratitude, fear. I do not know, but I know that Valia cannot go back to what it was. We have seen what caring truly means, what compassion truly costs, and we cannot forget that. You have changed us forever. She stood up and looked down at the young human who cried too easily and cared too much. Thank you, she said quietly, and I am sorry that saving us hurt you so badly. Mina smiled through her tears. It was worth it. Every moment of pain was worth it to see those children live. Over the next few days, the humans finally started to rest. They slept long hours, ate proper meals, let their bodies recover. The Valian doctors took over the treatment protocols, applying human methods with growing confidence. The plague continued to retreat. More children recovered every day. Team Min spent those days reviewing human history files. He read about Earth, about the diseases, the predators, the disasters that had shaped humanity. He read about human wars, where they had killed each other by the millions. He read about human compassion, where they had saved each other by the billions. He read about human medicine, which was aggressive and radical compared to other species. Humans cut into bodies. They introduced foreign substances. They forced healing through sheer determination. Their approach to medicine was like their approach to everything else, a war against death itself. And they were winning that war. When Dr. Jiwon finally woke up after 3 days of forced rest, the first thing he asked was how many children had recovered. When they told him the numbers, he smiled. Then he cried. Not sad tears, but relieved ones. We did it, he whispered. We actually did it. You almost died doing it, Captain Dongjun said sternly. She was sitting beside his bed, looking exhausted but relieved. You cannot do that again, ever. If another species asks for help, then we will answer, Dongjun interrupted. But smarter next time, with better planning, with more crew, with proper rest schedules. We do not need to destroy ourselves to save others. We can do both. Jiwon nodded slowly. You are right, I was reckless. I put my mission above my life. That was wrong. No, T-Min said from the doorway. Everyone turned to look at him. It was not wrong. It was human. You saw children dying and you could not accept it. You fought with everything you had. That is what humans do. But perhaps Captain Dongjun is right. Perhaps you can be more careful while still being human. He entered the room and stood beside the bed. I have been studying your species, trying to understand you, and I think I finally do. You are not peaceful like us. You are not logical like some species. You are not detached like others. You are fierce and emotional and stubborn, and you care so much that it hurts you. That caring is your greatest strength and your greatest weakness. That sounds about right, Jiwon agreed with a weak laugh. And you have taught us something, T-Min continued. You have shown us that caring is not a weakness, that emotion is not illogical, that sometimes the right thing to do is the hard thing, the painful thing, the thing that costs you more than you can afford. You have ruined our comfortable peace, and I think that is good. Hana appeared in the doorway. "The last critical patient has been moved to stable condition," she announced. Her voice shook slightly. "The plague is defeated. The children are safe." The room fell silent. Dr. Jiwon closed his eyes, tears sliding down his face. Captain Dongjun bowed her head. Min felt his own eyes burn with emotion he had not felt in years. They had won. The children were safe. The humans had crossed space, damaged their ship, hurt themselves, poured out everything they had. And it had been enough. "Thank you," Min said quietly. "Thank you for answering our call. Thank you for caring about strangers. Thank you for teaching us what compassion really means." Mina, who had followed Hana into the room, smiled through her tears. "You are welcome," she said simply. "That is what humans do. We answer calls for help. We care about strangers. We fight for others. That is who we are." And Min realized that Valia had sent an SOS to Deathworlders and received something far more dangerous than violence. They had received compassion, so fierce it could move across galaxies. And nothing would ever be the same. 6 months after the humans departed, Hana stood in the training facility and watched young Valians push themselves to exhaustion. They ran on machines set to higher gravity. They practiced emergency medical procedures with aggressive speed. They studied human techniques for treating injuries and diseases. They were learning to fight like humans fought. Not with violence, with compassion. "Again," the instructor shouted. A young Valian medical student named Yoonji collapsed on the training mat, breathing hard. She had been practicing rapid response procedures for 3 hours. Her body shook with exhaustion, but she got back up and started again. Min walked up beside Hana. They watched the training in silence for a moment. "This is what you meant, is it not?" he asked quietly, "when you said the humans ruined us." "Yes," Hana replied. "Look at them. A year ago those students would never push themselves like this. They would have trained carefully, slowly, logically. They would have accepted reasonable limits. But now they train like humans," Min finished. "Like beings from a death world who learned that acceptable limits are just excuses." Below them, Yoonji completed the procedure. The instructor nodded approval and called for a break. Yoonji immediately asked to go again. She wanted to be faster, better, stronger. She wanted to be ready if another crisis came. She wanted to answer the call, the way humans had answered Valia's call. "The council approved the plan this morning," Min said. "We are building a rapid response medical fleet. 5 ships to start, all equipped with both Valian and human medical technology. All staffed with volunteers trained in aggressive intervention techniques." "And you asked me to captain the first ship," Hana said softly. She had not given an answer yet. It was a terrifying responsibility. "You understand what the humans taught us better than anyone," Min replied. "You were the first to say they ruined us. You understood that we could not go back to what we were, that we had to become something new." Hana thought about the past 6 months, about the changes that had swept through Valia like a storm. Medical schools now taught human techniques alongside traditional methods. Young Valians volunteered for disaster response training. The entire culture was shifting from acceptance to action. "I am afraid," she admitted. "The humans almost destroyed themselves saving us. What if I ask that of my crew? What if I push them too hard and they break?" "Then you will have learned the hardest part of being human," Min said. "Balancing between caring too much and not caring enough, between recklessness and caution. Captain Dongjun struggled with that balance. I watched her fight with herself every day, trying to protect her crew while also pushing them to save lives." "How did she decide?" "She chose to trust her crew to know their own limits, to believe they were capable of incredible things. And she was right." Hana watched Yoonji start the procedure again, faster this time, more confident. The young Valian was not trying to become human. She was trying to become the best version of Valian she could be, inspired by what she had witnessed. "I will do it," Hana said. "I will captain the ship, But I need to see them first, the humans. I need to understand how they keep going after they have given so much. 3 months later, Hana stood on the bridge of the medical vessel Compassion and watched the stars stream past. Her crew of 30 Valians worked at their stations with focused intensity. They were heading toward the Koreth system, where a mining accident had trapped workers underground. Rescue efforts had stalled. An SOS had been broadcast, and 2 ships had answered immediately: the Compassion and the human vessel Resilience. When both ships arrived at Koreth, Captain Dongjun greeted Hana over the communication channel. The human captain looked older, more tired, but her eyes still held that fierce determination. "Captain Hana," Dongjun said with a slight smile, "I heard Valia started building rapid response ships. I am glad." "You inspired us," Hana replied honestly, "or ruined us, depending on how you look at it. We could not go back to watching others suffer after we saw how you fought to prevent it." "Then we both answer this call together," Dongjun said, "like partners." They coordinated their approach. The human team would handle the dangerous structural work underground. The Valian team would provide medical support and evacuation procedures. They worked together with smooth efficiency, combining Valian precision with human aggression. After 36 hours of continuous work, they brought the last miner to safety. 62 people saved, 0 deaths. On the Compassion, Yunji collapsed into a chair, exhausted but smiling. "We did it," she whispered, "just like the humans taught us." Hana felt pride swell in her chest. Her crew had pushed themselves hard, but not too hard. They had fought for others without destroying themselves. They had found the balance. When the rescue was complete, both crews met on the planet's surface for a brief rest before returning to their ships. Hana found Captain Dongjun sitting alone, looking at the stars. "May I join you?" Hana asked. "Please," Dongjun said. They sat in silence for a moment. 2 captains from 2 different species, both committed to the same mission now. "Do you regret it?" Hana asked quietly. "Coming to Valia, nearly losing your crew, changing us so completely?" Dongjun considered the question carefully. "No," she said finally. "We saved lives, we made a difference. That is what matters. And if we inspired your species to do the same, then the cost was worth even more." "You did not just inspire us," Hana said. "You ruined us. You destroyed our comfortable peace. You made us feel responsible for suffering we see. You taught us that indifference is not acceptable. We cannot ignore calls for help anymore. We must answer, even when it is hard, even when it costs us." "Is that so bad?" Dongjun asked with a slight smile. "No," Hana admitted. "It is terrifying and exhausting and painful, but it is also right. You showed us what we could be, what we should be, and now we have to live up to that standard." "You already are," Dongjun said, gesturing toward the Compassion. "You built ships, you trained crews, you answered a call and saved lives. You are not trying to be human. You are being the best version of Valian you can be. That is all anyone can ask." Over the next year, the number of rapid response ships grew. Valia launched 5 more vessels. Other species began following their example. The galaxy was changing. When distress calls went out, ships answered. Not just human ships anymore, but others too. The Tholian Assembly, which had once said the distance was too great, launched 2 medical research vessels. The Moravian Collective created a disaster response team. Even species that had never helped others began contributing resources and volunteers. Humans had started a movement without meaning to. They had simply answered a call for help, and the galaxy had watched. Other species saw that compassion could cross space, that caring did not make you weak, that sometimes the right thing to do was the hard thing. 2 years after the original SOS, Hana received a personal message from Earth. It was from Dr. G1. "Captain Hana," his message said, "I heard about your rescue operations. 62 miners saved, a cargo ship crew recovered from a stranded vessel, medical supplies delivered to a colony facing famine. You have done incredible work. I'm proud of what Valia has become. You were right when you said we ruined you, but I think it is a good kind of ruin. The kind that breaks down walls and builds something better. Keep answering those calls. Keep caring. The galaxy needs more beings like you. Like us, like everyone willing to say that suffering is not acceptable and that we will fight it with everything we have. Thank you for learning from us. Thank you for teaching others. Together, we can make the galaxy a place where no one suffers alone. Hana read the message 3 times. Then she saved it in her personal files, a reminder of why she did this work, why she pushed herself and her crew, why she could not go back to comfortable peace. That evening, another distress call came through. A colony transport had suffered engine failure. They were drifting. They had 3 days of life support remaining. Hana looked at the distance calculations. It would take 4 days to reach them at safe speeds. But if they pushed the engines, if they took risks, if they acted like humans. Set course, Hana ordered. Emergency acceleration. We are answering the call. Her crew moved immediately without hesitation. They had trained for this. They had learned from the best. They knew what it meant to answer an SOS. The compassion burned through space, engines screaming, pushing past safety limits. Just like the resilience had done 2 years ago. Just like humans always did when lives were at stake. 3 days later, they reached the transport. All passengers survived. Another successful rescue. Another call answered. And across the galaxy, more ships were doing the same. More species were training their crews in rapid response. More people were learning that compassion could be fierce, that caring could be aggressive, that the right thing to do was often the hard thing. Hana stood on her bridge and thought about T-Min's words from long ago. You have ruined us. Yes, the humans had ruined them. They had destroyed Valian peace and comfort. They had infected an entire species with their terrible, beautiful compulsion to care. They had shown the galaxy that Deathworlders were not monsters, but guardians who refused to let others suffer. And that ruin had spread like a plague across the stars, a plague of compassion, a disease of caring, an infection of fierce, unrelenting love for strangers who needed help. 10 years after the original SOS, Hana attended a gathering of rapid response captains from across the galaxy. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species, all committed to answering calls for help, all inspired by what humanity had done. Captain Dongjun gave a speech. She looked older now, with streaks of gray in her hair and more lines around her eyes, but her voice was still strong, still fierce. We did not mean to start a movement, Dongjun said. We just answered a call. That is what humans do. We see suffering and we cannot look away. We see problems and we cannot accept them. We see death and we declare war on it. And apparently that madness is contagious. Laughter rippled through the crowd, gentle, understanding laughter. But I am glad it spread, Dongjun continued. Because the galaxy is better when we care for each other, when we answer calls, when we cross impossible distances to help strangers, when we risk ourselves for others. That is what makes life worth living. Not comfort, not peace, but knowing that we made a difference, that we took suffering and turned it into healing, that we looked at darkness and brought light. She paused, her eyes scanning the crowd. So keep answering those calls, keep caring, keep pushing yourselves, keep fighting the good fight, and remember that every life you save, every person you help, every call you answer, you honor the best parts of every species, the parts that refuse to let others suffer alone. The crowd erupted in applause. Beings from across the galaxy standing together, united by compassion that humans had taught them, or unleashed in them, or ruined them with. Hana stood and applauded with the rest. She thought about the young Valian children who were alive because humans had crossed space to save them. She thought about the miners, the stranded crews, the colonies in crisis that had been rescued because species learned to answer calls. She thought about Mina's words from years ago. We survived because we cared about each other so much that we would die to protect each other. That caring, that emotion, that is what kept us alive. The humans had carried that caring across the galaxy, and the galaxy had learned. They had been ruined by meeting Deathworlders, ruined by learning what fierce compassion really meant, ruined by discovering they could not go back to comfortable indifference. And it was the best ruin that ever happened. That night, as Hana prepared to return to her ship, she received another distress call. Somewhere in the dark, someone needed help. Someone was suffering. She smiled and set course immediately. Because that was what she did now, what Valia did, what the galaxy was learning to do. They answered the call. Always. No matter the cost. Because the humans had taught them that some things were worth any price, and compassion was the most valuable thing in the universe. The compassion burned through space toward another crisis, another chance to make a difference. And across the galaxy, other ships did the same. Humans and Valians and Tholians and Moravians and countless others, all racing towards suffering with fierce determination. All ruined by compassion. All answering the call. All making the galaxy a place where no one had to suffer alone. And that made everything worth it.